now. Now, nobody knew about this draft of Mr. Prodi. He presented it to the College of Commissioners as a complete surprise. The convention was chaired by Mr. Valéry Giscard d'Estaing, who regarded itself as a body steered by divine providence to lead the peoples of Europe into unity. And in fact, it was a gathering of national political elites. And ladies and gentlemen, I was there when the text of the Constitution was adopted. The members of the convention were thrilled. They played the European anthem and waved the European flag, and they drank a lot of champagne. Very good champagne. Giscard behaved like a self-crowned emperor, like once Napoleon did. The event felt like being, for me, to be on a sort of a love boat or in a space shuttle. Everybody of name and fame were there. But one, perhaps a mundane player, had been forgotten, the citizen. All statements were in his name, on his behalf, and for his sake. But the citizen was never asked. And then these referenda appeared on the horizon. Now, the European federalists thought that, given the size of the legislative volume, European citizens would be very happy. They would be thrilled and relieved to see one overarching structure binding it all together, with the conclusion, more powers to Brussels. European symbols, and even a European president. In their eyes, the Constitution looked like so nice a gift that no citizen would contemplate to refuse it. But to their surprise, the citizens seemed to react with reluctance, recalcitrance, stubbornness. And the citizens, unfortunately, they did not like what they saw. They felt deceived and taken by surprise. In particular, the referenda in France and the Netherlands, two old European nation states, showed to what extent Europe had been constructed as a project disconnected from the people. The French and Dutch looked at Brussels and they saw a meddlesome behemoth, which was intervening in their daily lives. They regarded Brussels as a sort of a black box in which anonymous bureaucrats are scheming to impose legislation without anybody knowing. And honestly spoken, not all of these frightening views were true, or they were accurate, or based on hard evidence. But nevertheless, it was the perception. It was the overall picture, the panorama and the image that caught the eye. It wasn't always true, but it was the perception, and the perception dominates. And for the first time, the European empire, our empire, which was so successful over many years, was regarded as a threat to national sovereignty, to identity by its own citizen. And there is an important thing, an important phenomenon we have to consider. It is that the more the empire had grown, the bigger the European dimension, the more nation states felt a need for a national identity. Who are we and what will be our future in this big European empire? Voters ask themselves. They want to know who they are, what they stand for. And France and the Netherlands said no. And other member states which had scheduled referenda, like the United Kingdom, postponed the procedures because the Prime Minister at the time, Tony Blair, expected the same result. So in Brussels, when it happened, Mandarins came to me and they said, "You are Dutch. What's happening in Holland? Why are these people voting against us? Look what we have done for them. Why are they so ungrateful?" And they never understood why the Dutch said no. They never expected people to be so ungrateful. In the views of the Mandarins, referenda are a unique opportunity for people to say yes to treaties which are so beneficial to them. So federal-minded politicians concluded now that referenda are no good for Europe. They should be avoided. Keep the citizen out. Please no people around. And keep the commissioners indoors. So the European Commission decided to pay more attention to communication instead. The European Commission never communicated. it was not necessary, because the less people knew about it, the better it was. But now they have charged Vice President Mrs. Wallström with a strategic task. After 50 years, the Commissioner has to start to communicate. Now, previously, the Commission only issued glossy brochures telling the citizen three things. We are important, look what we do for you, be grateful to us. And now they have to apply communication, and I have to tell you, it is very difficult. I was in the Commission earlier this week, and they are still having many meetings on what to do for the citizen, how to communicate to them. And they were, for example, thinking about proposing a European stamp, so people would see the relevance of Europe and put it on a letter and send it around in the world. Now, I don't know whether a European stamp, since we have no flag anymore, is going to save us, or is going to relate to people or communicate. But still, if an organization hasn't communicated for 50 years, like as a person hasn't communicated for 50 years, how are you going to learn it on short notice? Now, one could also ask, why is there a gap between the European Union and the citizen while there is a European Parliament that is supposed to represent the people? And indeed there is a dichotomy here. Perhaps one has to conclude that the European Parliament is not that representative after all. Since the first direct election in 1979, the turnout at elections has only dropped. In some countries, it is even incredibly low. At various occasions, I confronted members of the European Parliament with dropping turnouts as a sign of disconnection. And I was then told that the turnouts were low because the people were happy and they did not bother to vote anymore. Everything was all right. I shouldn't worry about it. Or I was told that turnouts at presidential elections in the United States are also low. What was even more worrying, questions on the political legitimacy and the representative nature of the European Parliament were met with disbelief and allegations of heresy. They proved to some that perhaps I was a bad European. So here, Europe, Brussels, European Mandarins had become subject to group thinking. The European Parliament became part of it. It voted in huge majority for the Constitution, while a lot of people voted against. So no doubt there is something wrong here with the European Parliament. Now, the government leaders have tried to repair the deficiencies and bridge the popular gap by rewriting the Constitution and turning it into an ordinary European treaty. They agreed upon the final text last month in Lisbon, and I think they will sign it next month in Lisbon again. So for me, there are three criteria to judge this treaty. Yes, it works. First of all, the first question is, does the text reach out to the citizen and connect European integration to popular support? That's number one. The second question is, does the text streamline the institutional framework and prevent institutions from becoming top-heavy or anodyne? And thirdly, does the text clearly focus the mission of the European Union in a limited number of policy areas, so core tasks, in order to underpin economic prosperity in a global economy? Now, first of all, I'm glad the word constitution has been scrapped from the vocabulary, although many European politicians still read or try to read constitutional dreams between the lines of the current text. The word constitution was misleading and wrong. It was derived from the widely spread phrase, the ever closer union, which was a very important slogan in Brussels, above the beds of every Mandarin. As if in Europe, irreversibly, Europe was on the way to a federal state. The preamble of the Constitution